Hola a toda la audiencia de Criptonoticias. Seguimos aquí en la Baltic Honey Badger, segundo día, y nos encontramos con Maxim Orlovsky, el creador de RGB, un nuevo protocolo que promete traer nuevas características a Bitcoin y deshacerse un poco de las restricciones de la blockchain. How are you, Maxim?
Thank you, good. Still alive.
As RGB as well, that was recently launched. Congratulations for that.
Thank you. So we are both alive now.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, RGB, these three letters have been around in the industry. We have been hearing about it since quite a while, and it's already released. And I wanted to know, what does this mean to the Bitcoin industry? What does this mean to Bitcoin specifically? What is RGB?
RGB is the first manifestation of the completely new idea or paradigm, which is called client-side validation. And this is a huge shift from blockchain-based approach. So everything we had up to date, not just in Bitcoin, but also in all the crypto industry, is blockchain-based. Even if you talk about sidechains, even if you talk about Lightning itself or second layers, when you talk about ZK rollups, it all comes down to blockchain. It is still the same blockchain approach and something built on top of it. The client-side validation is completely new approach. With blockchain, everybody validates everything. They have to download, verify all the transactions, and for the whole world. That's why it doesn't scale. Anyway, well, you can have layer 2 scalability, but still it has its own restrictions, because at the end of the day, there is a global state and there is everybody which needs to verify it. Client-side validation puts this upside down. With the client-side validation, you just need to know your own part of history related to your asset, related to your state,
Okay.
and you verify just that. And there is no single registry or ledger where all the transactions are kept. You don't need to verify everything for everybody. You verify and download only your stuff for yourself, and when you move forward and transfer funds or assets to other parties, you interact peer-to-peer, not through miners.
And
And
this
sending
works
data
on chain. This doesn't work as a second layer, but in the
No, well,
internet.
it works chainless.
Chainless. Okay.
Yes. So you still need to reach a finality,
Exactly.
and that's
For
where
settlement,
yeah.
final transactions.
But the finality can be based on different systems. Of
Right.
course, as of today, you can use Bitcoin transactions both on chain or Lightning or Arc or any other Bitcoin transaction, and use Bitcoin transaction for finality and Bitcoin layers for finality. That's the approach which RGB was built originally with. But with the client-side validation and further RGB evolution, not of RGB itself, but ecosystem around it, this can become legacy actually, because there is a way how you can reach finality in client-side world without using any blockchain,
Okay.
including Bitcoin blockchain. It's called the Prime. With the Prime, you don't have blockchain. You have a consensus protocol for finality, but not blockchain based.
And why don't we want a blockchain?
Well, because like blockchain have two genetic defects. The first one is it's centralized ledger, and that's why everybody needs to download and verify it, and it doesn't scale because of that. Well, it's still order of magnitude of the number of transactions. If you have more transactions, you need to do more verification work. However, even with the ZK rollups, it's still the constant factor you are reducing. So if you have 10,000 transactions, you need to verify just 10, but it still scales with the number of transactions, meaning not scales with the number of transactions. With the client-side validation, you don't have the number of global transactions involved in the equation. So no matter how many transactions are happening in the world, your part of the history doesn't grow unless you transact, and when you transact, it grows with your transaction. So it's completely new model, and you can't achieve that with blockchain.
And is it RGB the same as client-side validation, or client-side validation is a part of RGB?
Client-side validation is a broader concept, like a blockchain, and RGB is an implementation of this concept. Like Bitcoin has a blockchain, RGB runs on client-side validation.
Okay.
So it's kind of one of the implementation. Then there are actually other protocols appearing in the client-side validation world. Since we started working, for instance, there is a shielded CSV proposal from Blockstream and other companies. John Nick and Robert Linus and some other guys did it. If I'm not wrong, maybe I don't remember all the authors. But it's an idea, like I don't know about an implementation, but still it goes in the same direction. And there was also some copycats like Tapas protocol by Lightning Labs, who just did this. They claim that they reinvented the idea, but they forgot to mention that it's not their idea. And there would be more. I expect much more to happen.
And what do we achieve with RGB? What are the use cases, or even with the client-side validation? How can people use this? They can use it right now? Like there is a product right now?
Yeah, they can start using it. Well, the first products are simple, like wallets, assets, but there are much more that can be done because RGB is the implementation of original idea of Nick Szabo about smart contracts. But all the implementations so far were blockchain based, and it has all restrictions. The moment you try to put it at the global scale, like run the global payment network on them, or even legal system, you got instantly into the non-scalability and privacy issues. With RGB, you can basically build a legal system.
Okay.
I mean, peer-to-peer, cypherpunk style, or crypto anarchist style, where there is no like global ledger of everything happening and everybody just look after all others people, but a very private-based legal system with a peer-to-peer contract. So it's not just about assets or tokens or even finance. It's more about the contracts between parties and companies which can be run in a private way. But of course, there is much more to be done in this area in terms of user-facing tools. And that's what we will be building over the years. But today, of course, people start with some scam tokens and other stuff, scam is also a form of adoption probably. So
that sounds pretty interesting because most of the things we do in the Bitcoin industry are related to finance and to assets, and to give this kind of twist to a more broader ecosystem and to solve that problem, which is how we deal with contracts in a peer-to-peer manner. I feel it's kind of revolutionary. How do you foresee this unfolding in the future? Are you in the process of exploring this more legal kind of stuff, or okay?
Well, I am very bad at predicting the future. For instance, when I started working on RGB, I was predicting that it would take half a year. It took 6 years.
Okay.
So maybe I'm not the person to be asked about that. But that's exactly why we were interested in RGB, not because of the tokens, but because we have seen the potential for it to become a proper digital layer for building a proper society or even civilization at the end of the day, because you can run economy on it. And by economy, I just don't mean only finance and trade. I also mean any sort of peer-to-peer relations in a society where you interact, you make a contract and you follow that contract, and you may enforce this contract not by a coercion, but by a program, the original idea of smart contracts. But so we're continuing on building into this direction. But I'm afraid it will take more years to have something tangible in terms of user facing and usable stuff. So today what RGB will be used for is assets, decentralized exchanges, also running on Lightning Network, some DeFi project, other type of DeFi projects, and that's of course, there will be wallets and stuff. It can be used for payments. For instance, now you will be able to pay with USDT on Lightning, which is cheap, fast, non-custodial, and still stable in terms of price. So you don't need to, if you have some running funds during the months, you don't need to track the price of Bitcoin when you spend on your goods.
You also said that we don't need soft forks to implement RGB.
Yes, no soft forks.
How is that?
Well, because blockchain is not used for any data or programmability.
We use Bitcoin. Change the consensus.
Yeah. Bitcoin doesn't validate RGB at all. It doesn't need to. And that's why we don't need to change anything in Bitcoin.
So how is the nexus with
it's just a cryptographic commitment which goes into Bitcoin transaction, and it doesn't add data because you just take the taproot output, which already includes the whole tree, and you put commitment into this tree, and the size of the transaction remains the same, and nobody in the world can even notice that there is something different in this transaction, even when it's spent.
Okay, and how is this different from, I don't know, the colored coins? I guess it's different. No?
Well, it's different because Colored Coins puts the program into op return in Bitcoin blockchain, and they only allow you to have some assets. So it's quite different.
But it's not a social consensus. I mean, it doesn't need the recognition from the. I mean, is RGB embedded in the transaction somehow, or
it's embedded but transparently to Bitcoin layer, and
right.
Everything that works with Bitcoin transactions wouldn't just see it, wouldn't know about it.
Okay, and you also
wouldn't notice.
You also mentioned in your presentation that this was built to be ossified in the protocol.
Yes.
How did you achieve that?
Well, it took 6 years.
With time and effort.
Yes. So that's why it took so long. Basically, there is nothing to add in RGB anymore. And, well, of course, there is a lot of stuff that can be built client-facing, user-facing, of course, wallets and tools and developer tools. So this all will evolve. But when we talk about the consensus layer, the layer of the contracts, once the contract is issued, it never mutates and never can be changed, unlike Ethereum. And the protocol itself running these contracts is final and fixed. That's why we also have a formal mathematical model of it, this last months, named Yellow Paper, like to cosplay the Ethereum Yellow Paper, because Ethereum Yellow Paper came with the promise of bringing Turing complete smart contracts, and now we finally have Turing complete contracts which are private and scalable, unlike Ethereum. So that's it.
Okay. And for if there is any crypto users that says, oh, that we have already a smart contracts in Ethereum, we have already smart contracts in this other shitcoin chain, how will you encapsulate the meaning? How is this different from the already made
well, first,
contracts?
Today RGB runs on Bitcoin and Lightning, which is the most decentralized, trustless systems in the world. No other chain has the same level of decentralization, censorship resistance, and everything. And with RGB, you can't even use Bitcoin filters to filter RGB-related transactions because they are indistinguishable ever. Like, there is no way it's mathematically can be proven. You can't prove that there is some RGB relation in this Bitcoin transaction, and there is no. So they can't even be filtered. So it's most decentralized and censorship-resistant system first. Second, it's most scalable system because now you don't put everything on chain. It's more scalable than ZK rollups. That's true. And of course, it's much more private than any of these systems.
Okay. Well, any other thing that you think that people should know about RGB, or an invitation to start testing it and start building on it? Do you want to share?
Well, just start using it, and there will be much more products this autumn released on it. Also be aware of scammers because there is a lot of copycats appearing, like everybody pretends to be RGB. We already been facing that for about 2 last years, like RGB++ and others. And now there is much, much more because the topic is hot, everybody is talking, and instantly there are projects trying to pretend and leverage that to fundraise or whatever. So just check always what specifically are you using. Like with the Bitcoin Cash, BSV, and other stuff.
Great. Thank you for your time, Maxim.
Thank you.